Hello, everyone, and welcome to Wisdom Seeker Live podcast, our weekly edition of the show. Glad to have everyone here that joins. Hope while you're here, you'll let us know where you're joining from. And as always, we look forward to hearing your comments and questions. Like to always talk about what wisdom is for us on the podcast. And wisdom's a journey. And that journey starts by gaining knowledge. And that's facts, figures, data, information that you can pick up formally, informally. And then the next step in that journey is to go from knowledge to understanding. Understanding, is where we take the knowledge that we pick up and we begin to use it and apply it in our lives and use it to gain experience. And then the third step in this process, and the most important one, is when we go from knowledge and understanding to wisdom. And wisdom, I got a frog this morning in my throat. Wisdom is about seeing things from a much bigger perspective. We begin to see ourselves better, both inwardly and outwardly. We also begin to see that what we do, what we say, the choices we make begin to impact others and not just ourselves. And so we want to make that leap from, again, knowledge, understanding to wisdom. And for those of us that have a spiritual bent, the way we like to put it is we want to begin to see things through God's eyes and begin to see that perspective from a much bigger place, including and getting into spiritual and eternal. So I am really privileged today to have a special guest with me, and I believe that you will enjoy hearing from her. It is Brielle Wohlenhaus, and I actually met Brielle through LinkedIn and was impressed with her profile and invited her to join us. And so look forward to bringing her on in just a moment. Welcome, Ildiko, Matthew, Brett. Glad to have all you with us today. Look forward to you engage. And so without further ado, let's bring Brielle on camera. Brielle, good morning. Thank you for joining us. I believe you're joining from Florida, right?
Yes, I am in the sunny Florida. Thank you for having me on and for the warm welcome.
Well, tell the audience a little bit about yourself so we can get to know you a little better, and then we'll go from there.
Sure. So a bit more context about myself and what I've been up to. I am currently a full-time college student. This is definitely the busiest season in my life. I tried to cram in 6 classes. Normally I've been going with 5. I'm running an entrepreneurship club with a couple of my best friends at my school.
Oh,
I've
wow.
been in and out of internships, just gaining more knowledge, more experience, and honestly, just trying out different career paths. Okay, what do I like? What don't I like? Working with different people, just throwing myself in different environments. So that's been great. And then I do a lot of work in and through LinkedIn, building my personal brand. And that has also brought a lot of phenomenal experiences.
Very good. Well, the fact that you are going beyond just taking classes and the fact that you're exploring uh, career direction in itself demonstrates that you, whether you realize it or not, are definitely taking a wise approach. I am a former school teacher, so I am very passionate about helping young people with education, careers, and leadership, and of course, wisdom. So I'm excited that you have, according to your LinkedIn profile, you want to be a voice of wisdom for your peers. And unfortunately, you are a rare breed with the younger generations. And one of the things that attracted to me ask you to come on board was that is a priority. And I'm glad to see it. And we just we need our future needs you and your friends that are approaching the same way. So it's kind of unique for a young person to make and be bold about stating that wisdom is a priority. How did you get there? That's I suspect I have some understanding, but I'm curious to get your background. By the way, welcome, Matthew. Good to see you. I appreciate you being here. So tell us how you, as a young person, have come to a place that wisdom is a priority for you.
Sure. So to again give a bit more context, I want to say it started in 2019 when COVID was first apparent. I started
Right.
looking at the people in my life, my friends, and I realized like, wow, I was always there for these individuals. I love to give, I love to help people, but it comes to a
Hmm.
certain point where if relationships aren't reciprocal, maybe it's time to reevaluate them and ask yourself, are these really true quality friends I want to have in my life? And the answer was absolutely not. I kind of just felt like they were taking advantage of me. And so I let those friends go. And that ultimately meant that it was a lonely season. I didn't have any quality friends for like a year and a half, I would say. And from that, I really just started diving in. What do I want to do with my life, especially after college, and was evaluating all of my life choices. And so from that, I eventually met some phenomenal people. Lonely seasons are sometimes inevitable, but I believe you eventually attract the right people. And so, in terms of my brand, I just started really honing in like, what can I do that's completely different? I've always been that way. I always like to be a trendsetter and do, big things. So, that was also the time where with social media and everything going around in the world, I was like, my goodness, like, my generation needs help. I'm not going to sugarcoat it here. Like there are a lot of kids out there who are struggling. Maybe they got dealt a poor hand in life and don't have parents sitting down with them, teaching them right from wrong. Hey, let's do this. Hey, we shouldn't be doing this. There's that. And then two of the other big things are instant gratification and, again, social media. I believe we've become so desensitized to many things as a generation, like, just with all these extreme ideologies nowadays. It's like, where is all of this stuff coming from? And a big piece is it does stem from social media. When people are seeing certain things time and time again, it becomes okay. And the truth is, a lot of these things are simply not okay, and they're
Mm.
extremely damaging. And these kids are not realizing the long-term ramifications
Mm.
that coincide with their decisions or what they watch or what they're feeding themselves. And so that's where I was like, you know what, I'm going to step up. I realize I'm not the popular vote here with my faith, with my beliefs in many realms, but I don't care. I don't care if I'm going to get crapped on for that, because somebody needs to stick up. And
Mm.
more and more people start doing that, which, some of my friends who are on right now, I know are on my team about that, then that's a good thing. We can start to be the change that is so desperately needed. But I just think it comes down to, learning to step away from the crowd, what I call the
Mm.
masses. I'm aware of what many kids are doing my age, whether that be the choices they're making or the
Mhm.
friends they're hanging around with. And I just simply decided to do my own thing.
Well, it takes a lot of courage to stand alone, and there's also a great deal of benefit from standing alone as well, as you are obviously experiencing. By the way, welcome, Brett. Glad to see you as always, my friend. Brett's actually been on the podcast before.
He's awesome.
Isabel, glad to see you. Hawk, go ahead.
Oh, I was adding in.
um, glad to have you all on board. Look forward to your comments, and we'll share those in a moment. But yes, standing alone is hard but valuable.
Mhm.
And what we look and learn from history and learn from the greatest leaders in history, they began to stand alone, and one person at a time started movements. And that's the way we impact our world. And so I'm encouraged that you are willing and have stood up and stood alone, because again, it's a much needed step. I can be a voice out here, but unfortunately, I'm an old guy, and folks look at me and go, well, that sounds nice, usually respectful and all that, and then many ignore it. And so I'm glad to see that you've made that choice. And I know a lot will benefit from your decision, your willingness to be courageous. Welcome, Varshith. Glad to have you with us. So I have to hone in on something. You mentioned faith because, and this is something that we talk about on Wisdom Seeker, is that in order to fully experience and gain wisdom, it has to involve our whole being, which, we have a body and a soul, which most will acknowledge. But the part that gets lost is that we have a spirit. Mm-hmm. And that's where faith comes in. So tell us a little bit about your faith journey and how it factors into your wisdom journey.
Yeah, and that's another big thing too. In my opinion, we're a nation far from God, and that's where a lot of this trouble is occurring from. So when I was, again, after COVID, 2019, I would say, that's when I decided I want to move from the Midwest to Florida. I made a big jump by myself, and that has brought a lot of growth and opportunity itself again right there. But I just wanted to do something completely different. I wanted to finish my degree, and here I am. And from that's where I really started growing in my faith, I want to say, because my story is pretty cool. I wasn't really doing any preliminary research at that time in terms of searching for colleges. Mm-hmm. I got accepted to ASU, their business school, which is a really, really great business school, but ASU is not my scene. It's a huge party school. So I'm so glad I didn't go there. But PBA, which is in South Florida, I saw a message pop up on my computer one day. And again, I did no preliminary research about colleges. So I was like, wow, this is either really good targeting or this is what I would call a God moment. Okay. And it says, God wants you to be here. He has a plan for your life. And so I checked it out and I was like, oh, well, this is cool. I'm starting I got to start the college process search soon. So I checked it out. My mom and I flew down to Florida. We checked out the school and everything, and I realized I loved it here. I don't think there could have been a more perfect place that God could have sent me. And the area, everything's around, like, it's perfect. And so being at PBA, I started just meeting some phenomenal individuals, and, being on your own, living by yourself, you have to start doing everything on your own. Your parents aren't there to help you with everything, and you just figure things out. So alongside God and growing in my faith, I just believe that everything that has happened, whether that be good or bad, he has a bigger plan and a bigger purpose through all of it. So just going to chapel at my school and serving and doing all of these little things to grow in my faith, it's just really been, a special thing. And I've also met people and have friends who aren't Christians. I think that's a big misconception. And, of course, there are Christians who are very judgmental. There's everyone in every group who, there's an exception to the rule. However, my point is, I love having friends who don't think and believe like me. I like to have challenging conversations and sit down with them. Why do you think like this? Why do you believe that? And I think that's a good thing. And all that I can do, and as Christians, I believe all that we can do is at least plant seeds and show that, this is why I believe God is real. Like, I'm living proof of certain things. I won't force it upon you, but again, I can plant that seed.
Well, very good. Sounds like a great journey. My faith journey actually began a little over 50 years ago, but that's another story for another day. But I value faith, and it's such a key part of my life. And so I understand how valued. Now, for those of us that don't know, what is PBA?
So PBA is Palm Beach Atlantic University. I want to just say, because I'm reading through the comments, Matthew's comment about diversity and inclusion, I completely agree. It excludes one political spectrum. It excludes Christianity, but it seems that everything else is okay. And so I totally agree with that. That's what I, simply don't understand if we're trying to be inclusive and like allies to everyone, well, then maybe we should actually be, supportive of everyone. But
Yes.
yeah, PBA.
Inclusive of everyone, not just inclusive of the groups that we think need to be featured somehow. Definitely. And so let me get to a few comments and we'll address those. First one is one from Brett. He
Mhm.
says, putting a high bar on who belongs in our inner circle is so important.
Yes.
Hire and fire. Relationship. You talk about your relationships and how impactful. Tell us a little more about that, because that is so important, especially in our wisdom journey. So tell us more about how you develop those relationships.
Sure. So again, I had that lonely season where I didn't really have any solid friends. I did have, she's still my best friend to this day back in the Midwest. She's been my most solid friend for about 8 years now. But besides that, I did go through a lonely season down here in Florida where, again, for a year and a half, I didn't have any friends down here. And it's not always easy, it's tough, but I do also really enjoy my alone time. So I kind of got used to it, started praying about it more. And sure enough, this fall semester, I walked into a class and I saw this girl that I had an internship with. And I just kind of said, hey, we rekindled a little bit. And from that, now she's my best friend. And we happen to be walking into the cafeteria one day.
Mm-hmm.
And I met up with two other guys who I had a class with. And now they're my closest friends. We just, I don't know, that day we just like mingled, started talking. And as I hung out with these people a couple times more and more, I realized like, oh my gosh, this is such an answered prayer. They do think like me. They do act out in the world like me. They share the same beliefs. And I do believe when it comes to your closest friends, that is a good thing, that you do think the
Of
same,
course.
have the same morals. That's very important to me. Personally, I don't drink, I don't smoke, I'm not a partier. That's
Mm.
just a personal decision. I simply don't think those things are fun. My idea of fun is going out to dinner. It's reading, like going to the beach. Those are just my personal ideas of
Right.
fun. And these people challenge me intellectually. We can sit down and have great conversations. We talk about our future. It's not, hey, let's go get blackout drunk every weekend. That's just
Yeah.
simply a waste of time, if you ask me. And that's not effectively utilizing your 20s. And that's something that I'm also really trying to push out. And a lot of kids my age, they don't want to hear it. That's the
Mm.
reality. They think, oh, come on, like Brielle, but just have a little fun. You go ahead and do that, and we'll see where that gets you 10, 20, 30 years down the road. I'm going to stick on my path. And if you want to go down it with me, great. Like I will empower you. I will push you to become a better person every single day. But what I will not have is somebody dragging me down on that path because they possibly don't feel great about their decisions. And so if I'm there with them, then they feel a lot better.
Yes. Well, and you've shared a couple of times about things happening, coincidences, and I'm not much on coincidences. I believe that things happen as a matter of providence, and that if we are available for it, things come in our life through God's hand to help us along our path as we go along. And yes, it's interesting. I'm all for inclusion of everybody because, first of all, as in my faith, love is there, and God loves everybody. It's
Mhm.
not, everybody, but
Yes.
it's everybody. And so I'm all for inclusion and all, but we're attracted. I mean, yeah, we are attracted to commonness, likeness in people,
Hmm.
and then we have to choose to be inclusive, to love people.
Yes.
It's a choice, because there are times that as a Christian, that I have to choose to love people because I don't always feel it for various reasons. It could be something with me, it could be something with them, or both.
Yep.
So I get that, and but having a core group of people to support each other in our faith, and just being courageous. because part of what you're doing is being very courageous, because you're a Generation Z. Is
Yep.
that correct?
Yes.
So you are, and I'll try not to get nerdy on you here, but I study the generations because of workforce and things like that. And you're a third generation that has come along and has been brought there culturally to challenge and even doubt and question anything spiritual,
Mhm.
or especially the Christian faith. So I appreciate your courage in standing up, and it's much needed. So let's get back to some comments. By the way, Lydia, welcome aboard. Always good to have you. Some of these folks are regulars here on the Wisdom Seeker podcast. Professor Jagdish, you as well. Good to see you. So let's get back to some comments, because it's always good to hear from the audience. Matthew says, yes, morality and doing the right thing has nothing to do with what the masses are doing. Stick up for what you know is the right thing to do. So would you like to comment on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I realize that sometimes when you are being a leader that is different, that doesn't have the popular vote, you will be highly disagreeable. As much as, I want to think people agree with me, that just hasn't been the reality with a lot of things, and I'm more than okay with that. I'm not going to go into any conversation feeling uncomfortable. I'm confident in my values and my beliefs. And like Matthew said too, it's so true. We don't have to like everybody, but we're called to love our neighbor. And especially when it's not easy. And I've noticed that, for myself as well, like, oh, this is hard to have this conversation with this person. Like, why aren't we seeing eye to eye? But that's when we really can try our best to sit and love them. I try and understand, like, they have gone through something that I haven't gone through, or vice versa. So let's just at least try to sit down and have a civil conversation, which brings me to another very important topic of communication, which is so lacking in my generation. I mean, I don't know how we got to the point that when somebody has a different viewpoint than you, we just think yelling and screaming in their face and name calling is okay. I mean, that just shows a very low level of emotional intelligence. Like, at least have the human decency to hear people out, to hear where they're coming from, why they think this way, and just, have it in a steady fashion. I would say, no yelling, no screaming, no name calling. Just, we need to bring back healthy communication skills.
I think that, and something you have alluded to that is a key to that, and it is in the principle you referenced, love our neighbor. Okay. And that's part of the great commandment. But there's a second part to that commandment: love our neighbor as ourselves. And unfortunately, we have multiple generations now that have not learned. They've been told to love themselves. What they haven't been taught is how to love who God has made them. And it's a different idea. One's ego, one is reality and understanding of the value that we have as a person created by a loving, caring creator.
Yep.
And when we get to a point that we understand that value, we love who we are made to be, then we stop trying to prove ourselves. We stop being defensive with people around us, and then we can have those conversations in a reasonable, rational way, because we're not trying to prove our worth and our value by what we say and do. That's established. Now we can talk about different aspects of life and share ideas and thoughts. And that's where you have come to, it appears, based on your comments. Let's see, Hawk, it makes a comment. That's HRM Uland is Hawk. He's a regular. And he makes the comment that we have to be a shepherd, not a sheep. And that is such a key point. What do you see a lot of sheep around you?
Very, very many. I mean, more than I would like to admit. I think that's part of finding yourself too, is unfortunately many kids do fall accustomed to peer pressure and what everyone else their age is doing. They think there is like a right way. And when you are in college, you should be just like having fun and doing whatever you want with whoever you want. And again, no damaging ramifications that coincide with those actions, right? Like that's, as a society, what we're desensitized to nowadays. And it's not good, because there's factual evidence that with a lot of these choices, there are damages that come with those choices. And so I think a lot of people at least get to a point down the road where they then realize that and they do have that epiphany. But again, one of the things I'm pushing out is let's skip that phase and just get on the right track. A lot of people do, they want the nice car, they want the nice house, they want to obtain success in some way, whatever that looks like for each and every one of us. But it entails a lot of hard work and a lot of sacrifices. And I guess it comes down to, you have to be very wise with the decisions that you're making and the system/strategies that you're implementing daily to get there.
Indeed. And again, it's really refreshing, remarkable that you've come to realize some of these things as a younger person. Unfortunately, many people, especially in our culture today, they are on the long path, taking the long curve to growing in wisdom. And the value of wisdom is the fact that we see things from that bigger perspective, or as I said earlier, through God's eyes. And when we do that, we start understanding more about the consequences of our choices. And the idea of consequences has been lost now on several generations for a number of reasons. And again, I can get nerdy on you and start down the road trying to break it down. But it is a problem that your generation is facing. And it's because, unfortunately, and my generation complains sometimes about your generation, and I have to raise my hand to my generation and say, look, you are part of the reason that the generations are what they are, because of the unwise choices that our generation made. And I say, stop pointing fingers. It's not productive. It's not healthy. And most of all, it's not wise. So let's see. Varshith makes a comment. God only asked, learn from nature. Indeed, part of what we can do is watch creation. The beauty of having intelligent design that we have is that there are a lot of lessons that we can learn about our creator through the creation. So your thoughts on that?
Yeah, which it kind of coincides too. It just reminded me of that we're not created to be alone either. Another thing that is becoming more and more visible is, I'm a strong, independent woman. And I know Matthew's doing the Men Matter Too movement, which I love. I think that's wonderful because, for an example, on, Women's Day a couple weeks ago, I don't look at it like, I'm woman, like I'm better than you, hear me roar. Like, no, it's just, you're a man, I'm a woman, and we both have value to provide. No one is superior. I believe we're curated to come together as a team and both have things to offer, and that's more than okay. Like, I can change a tire, for an example, but do I want to? No. Like, I do think of certain things that are like manly roles and then more feminine roles, and that's more than okay. Of course, you could make the argument, yes, we could do everything alone, but do you really want to? I mean, by 2030, there's going to be, I forgot the exact number, so I'm not going to throw it out there, but there's going to be a huge number of women who are in their 30s, 40s, and 50s who are alone because they put their career and everything first. And I don't want a man, I don't need a man, but then they're lonely. They could have all the money in the world and the most amazing career, but you're now alone. So I think realizing again that we both have value to provide and there's nothing wrong with that. We both need each other. And as independence can be certainly wonderful. Like, I'm a very independent person. I know that when I meet my person, you come together.
Hmm. Well, you hit on a point that I have become very um, particular about, that I think we've got to gain some wisdom in. And that is that your generation, and actually two other generations prior, have been told that, three generations, excuse me, prior, that you've been told you can do anything you want to, just put your mind to it. And unfortunately, that is a wrong idea. We
Mhm.
are designed for purpose, and that design, like you said earlier, includes a purpose that involves everyone that's been created.
Mhm.
That we have to connect humanly, but if we're all able to do all we need to do without each other, we don't need each other.
Yep.
And if we're all the same, somebody's not needed, and that's not part of the uh, uh, creative, intelligent design that we have. And I appreciate that you have recognized that. In fact, our uniqueness is, have quote, that our uniqueness is the extra in extraordinary.
Mhm.
And when we can tie into that, and that goes back to loving who we're designed to be, then we're in a better place to love others and to accept others, because we go, this is me and this is the value I bring, but I don't bring everything. So I need you to bring your value, and we work together. So I appreciate that. Again, uh, I'm really pleased and surprised at the degree of wisdom that you're gaining. And I know it's because you've made a choice to seek it. And that's why I really, my ultimate desire is that a lot of people become true wisdom seekers. Let's see, boy, you've got a lot of
I
folks.
love it. Bring up the comments.
Let's see what Brett says. Says such an excellent point. Parts of society is attempting to replace God with government, and we must ensure our faith in Almighty God never wavers under these false narratives. The forces behind this will do anything to destroy our faith. They will not prevail unless we allow them to. Your thoughts on that comment?
Yeah, I think that's very true. I think some people are too trusting in the government. I put my trust in God, but yeah, it's more of a worldly approach. Again, when we look at social media, many of the individuals in my generation are looking, oh, Ariana Grande is saying this, or some famous, role model influencer. So that must be correct, right? Well, I strive to think critically and rationally. I personally think with facts. If I have something in front of me that I know is a fact, I tend to go down that road. I tend to push my feelings aside when it comes to these things, and again, bring in that critical thinking.
Well, and you make a great point. There are times, we're all of what we are, we experience, including our emotions, but there are times that our emotions will lead us astray. And we have to be willing to consider what we have learned through wisdom to be true. And if our emotions don't line up with what's true, we have to choose to uh, act on the truth, and then the emotions will, in the proper time and the proper way, come along. So very good. Let's see, Matthew makes the comment that we all need to be more ecumenical. By the way, welcome Rafia and Richard, glad to have you guys here with us today. So your thoughts on Matthew's comment, Brielle?
Yeah, absolutely. I know he's a good buddy of mine. We've had some great conversations. It goes back to the loving your neighbor and just adding in diversity and culture into the workplace, into your friendships, into the world. I think that is a wonderful thing. I think when we get too stuffy on our own thoughts and opinions, then that
Mm-hmm.
can also get in trouble. But, you know, yeah, I'm seeing another comment here from Richard. I really do agree with that as well when we were talking about being alone. And there is a huge difference between being alone and being lonely. In my personal case, that, lonely season of that year and a half, I didn't feel lonely. I felt wonderful because I was evolving and growing, and it was so tremendous to see that growth.
Yes, and there is another principle, and I hope I'm not going to wear it out making a comment about principles, but the value of wisdom is you learn principles that are designed into who we are and into creation. But there is a principle called valley experience or discipline of loneliness, and it's a very valuable part of our experience when we embrace it. Unfortunately, are we having some technical difficulties? Sounds like, okay, I will, I think you're back.
Yeah, I lost you for a second.
Yeah. So anyway, I was just talking about you've discovered the principle of the discipline of loneliness and the value it brings. And unfortunately, again, we've had several generations now that resist anything that might be uncomfortable or that might be hard. In fact, unfortunately, much of the last three generations have been protected from the consequences of their choices. And one of the victims of that is wisdom, because part of the way we get wisdom is we have to struggle through. We have to face those hard concepts and deal with them. Let's see. Oh my goodness. Let's. Okay. Matthew makes another comment. Well said. Spending lots of dollars on nights that you won't remember, instant gratification for some with long-term negative consequences. And that is an unfortunate part of much of the so-called college experience. Somebody says, well, you need to go to college just for the experience. And I'm going, no, I'm not sure that's the best move, especially based on the college experience that is the norm these days. Thoughts on that one?
And especially how expensive college is. It costs an arm and a leg. Mm-hmm. You would think you would at least take it seriously, especially if it's coming out of your pockets.
Yes.
But, I agree. It's one of the big things for drinking for me is like, I don't feel myself. I don't feel like I'm in my body. I don't want to feel like that. I'm fun. I make people laugh. I make people smile. Like that's just my God-given personality. So I don't need alcohol to have a good time. So why would I want to then have it? That's just my personal views about it. And again, it is money. Like I like to spend my money on a nice dinner, or maybe I get like a fun snack or treat out with my friends. That's just my idea of a good time. And I want to remember the moments. Like he said, I love remembering the moments, not waking up the next day like, I get up at least 5 every morning and I go to the gym, I lift weights. If I'm hungover, that's not happening. And so that's like a wasted day to me.
Yes. By the way, welcome, Patsy. I apologize. I saw your name pop up a minute ago and trying to keep up. I tell you, Brielle is obviously in her wisdom and seeking has become very popular. So appreciate you being here. One of our regulars, Professor Jagdish, has a comment. Says, very correct. Nothing happens without a reason. It's the hand of providence that makes things happen in a particular way. Mm-hmm. Thoughts on that, Brielle?
Yeah, I believe things do happen in a specific way. Like you said earlier, I don't believe in coincidence. I believe in, this is a God moment. Like this is him trying to tell me something, or the Holy Spirit's trying to speak to me in some way. Mm-hmm. Everything that's happened is, I do believe, for a reason. Of course, there are human mistakes, human errors, like things we do as human beings where you can't intentionally do something and then say, everything happens for a reason. Like, no. But I do think in the grand scheme of things, there are certain things that happen on your path that are absolutely for a reason.
Yes. And Again, part of it goes to our worldview and our perspective in terms of Creator, God. You
Yeah.
know, what is our thought of God? First of all, do we even believe there is God? And then once we do, what does that look like, and how does that impact us in our lives on a daily basis? Or is that even part of it? It's a lot of decisions that we face, and until we begin to deal with those things, we're going to lack in the opportunity to gain wisdom, because we're missing a big part of who we are and who we've been designed to be, and the world that is designed by the same creator. Okay, so let's see. Uh, I'm looking at the different. Matthew makes the comment. Uh, yes, people always reach for labels right away and cannot hear another point of view. As a Christian with certain moral standards, you'll get called all sorts of names under the sun.
Mm-hmm.
Indeed. Uh, Again, standing alone takes courage. Your thoughts?
Yeah, it is sadly really true. And it's not just for Christians, like there are some people who think all Black people are all bad. Some people think all white people are bad. Some people think all cops are bad. And that's simply not true. Listen, there are inherently, I don't want to say bad people, but people who do crappy things in this world. That just is how it is. But we can't sit and stereotype and label these groups. That's just simply inaccurate based upon our own personal beliefs, because our own personal experiences with someone or a group of people. There are Christians who do bad things. There are Christians who are judgmental. Like, it just is how it is with certain people. But
Mm-hmm.
I believe we have to go through life on our own path, meeting different types of people, and then go from there. All right, who do we want to surround ourselves with? Like, who
Mm-hmm.
are we not the biggest fan of? But again, find your own way, but don't sit and stereotype people and push people into a certain group.
Do you think it's fair to say that, back to the concept of accepting who we're created to be, that a lot of those behaviors are defensive, and it's in order to somehow make us feel better about ourselves by trying to make other people look like us rather than encourage them to be who they're created to be? Could that be?
Yeah, I think sadly part of it too, what I witnessed again through some friends, what I call fair weather friends, is when I started leveling up, when I started, obtaining certain things in my life, those people didn't like that. They didn't like that I was going places, and they saw that. And as much as I wanted to like lift them up, come with me, like I'll push you to become better, I just realized I had to let it go because they didn't want that. And then there was a source of envy or jealousy that came along with that. And so I truly believe that is where part of it stems from, is people will see you succeeding and they don't like that. And so they try to drag you down with their poor decisions, with their
Mm-hmm.
poor choices, because it does ultimately give them a sense of security. Like, I
Yes.
know I'm not doing something ethical, or I know I'm maybe not making the best choices. And that repetition of a lifestyle ultimately isn't going to get me a whole lot in life. So I'm going to drag you down with me.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And that way they feel more justified
Mhm.
in their choices by trying to pull you in to make bad choices. They may not be the exact same bad choices, but bad choices nevertheless.
Right.
Okay, let's see. Lydia makes a comment. A servant's heart with humility matters. Okay, now for starting back in the Gen X's, we had a thing, and it was actually kind of started with the latter part of my generation, a concept, and I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but we had a big deal. It was called the me generation, and also looking out for big number one. And it has unfortunately become pervasive in a lot of generations. So, your thoughts on servant's heart with humility?
Yeah, servant's heart with humility. I think humility is a huge thing, because that's another big point, is sometimes when people start to, obtain wealth and obtain success, then it's the look at me, I'm doing great. The always wanting more mentality, as I call it, like it's never enough. I always got to have the nicer car, the bigger house. That's also not good. That's why you don't see me on other social media platforms like so many people do, is they sit and showcase their highlight reels and all the amazing parts of their life, but it's just simply not the full truth. It's not the full reality. And so that's where humility comes into place. Like, realize that that's also not the right answer, is the look at me approach. If that's like part of your story, maybe you can incorporate some of those things, like, hey, this is the stuff you get if you're going to do X, Y, and Z. But being overly expressive and just, boasting and bragging at that point, I'd say that's not being humble. That's, again, letting your ego get in the way and just showing what I have and kind of rubbing it in a lot of people's faces, which we're not supposed to be doing either as Christians.
Let's see. I'm sorry. Yes. Thank you for that. And I'm looking at some more comments where I'm watching our time slide away, and I want to get some additional comments. Raphia, and sometimes on StreamYard, I don't know if you've experienced this. Some people are just identified as LinkedIn user. This is Raphia. She makes a comment that it's not a realistic approach to think we don't need men or vice versa. You want to delve into that a little more?
Yeah, like we were talking about earlier, you're right. It's not realistic because in the most, in the biggest ways, we need men and women, like for children, and and those lines when it comes to marriage and everything. That's how we were designed. And again, going back to like the more masculine roles and the more feminine roles, I don't think there's anything wrong with that at all. I think that's a pretty cool thing, if you ask me, to realize like, wow, there's somebody that was created totally different to do totally different things, and vice versa. Like, women give things that men can't give, and same with men. And so to come together, it's like a puzzle piece. You complete each other, and when you find your person, that's just a really cool thing.
That is such a key. Again, goes back to that scripture you mentioned earlier. Love God and your neighbor,
Yes.
But do so as yourself. We have to face and accept who God has made us in order to accept others. That's a principle of design that is often missed in all fronts, and even including among the churches and faith systems, that we've lost that part of the wisdom that is in there in Scripture.
Right.
Wow. Let's see. Okay. This is something I want to bring up that Brett asked, and I think this is valuable. By the way, I'm beginning to think, if your time and schedule allows, that we might need to do another episode with you, because we're not going to get to all these great comments. But so be thinking about that, and let's explore that. So Brett makes a comment, says, what can the older generation leaders do to help the younger generation adapt to real world pressure so they don't turn to alcohol, drugs, and sadly, suicide in some cases? So your thoughts?
Yeah. I was just actually writing an article about this the other day, especially when COVID turned around. All those things, depression, anxiety, suicide rates were 45%, I want to say, more exacerbated through the roof. It was terrible. It really, really heartbreaking. I would say the biggest thing is stop the mindless scrolling for my generation. Stop wasting your time on social media. The comparison has got to stop. If you're not using your time on social media wisely, if you're not using it to build your business, or I say the bigger thing, to ultimately help others in some way, simply wasting your time. And I hate to see wasted potential. I don't want to see wasted potential anywhere, because the thing is, a lot of these kids, they're very bright, they're very smart, and I think they haven't had someone telling them that. They haven't had somebody, letting them know, like, hey, I see you, I hear you, you're valued. And I think they really are just trying to fill a void. And when it comes to the drugs, the sex, the alcohol, that's what these kids are turning to. So Brett, that's the biggest thing, is hop off social media, or start using it wisely. I'm a big pro LinkedIn fan. Like literally, I spend all my free time on there. My parents think it's hilarious that I'm like, they're like, I love that my kid's on LinkedIn on a Saturday night, like replying to her comments, And I think it's funny too, but I always say get on LinkedIn, and very few actually listen, but get on LinkedIn, start cultivating real relationships, engaging within the community, talking with people, DMing people, and you'll be so surprised if you're consistent with it, the opportunities that fall into your lap alongside hard work. Maybe it's not watching trashy TV shows for some kids. It's, just start taking care of your body. I mean, I have all these different solutions that kind of culminate in one package on how we can build a better future, but those are just some of them.
Yes, a lot of principles when you pay attention, and when you begin to apply them, the world makes a lot more sense. And the problem is that finding and applying those principles isn't valuable in the current younger generations. So I need to ask a question. When I started this podcast, over 2 years ago, by the way, this was not something that I thought I would want to do. I'm not a front camera person. I'm much more comfortable looking through the lens from behind and helping make things happen. But God said, no, I need you to do this. I said, okay, Father. But one of the things that I challenge people, and I'd be curious to know your thoughts as a younger generation on this challenge. Okay. And the challenge is, and it's a 40-day challenge. And if you think about patterns in the Bible, you'll understand and appreciate the 40-day reference. But the challenge is this: first, to disconnect from the things in your life that are distracting. And a lot of my generation is disconnecting from the regular media and not being inundated. I think for your generation, social media is a big distraction. But whatever it is in your life, first step is to make a choice to disconnect. It may be for a minute, it may be for an hour, it may be for a day, it may be for a lifetime, depending on your situation. But don't just disconnect. Second part of this challenge is to begin to observe. Okay, now that I've got some additional time because I've disconnected from these other things, I'm going to take time to observe inwardly and observe outwardly. And then the last step in this challenge is, based on what I observe, what wisdom can I gain from it? Seeking wisdom. What do you think? Does that have any does that resonate with you? Could it resonate with more of your generation?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we all have our specific areas that we need to work on. We all have limiting beliefs at some point or another. And if you think you don't have any, then maybe that's your first one.
Limiting belief.
But it is true, sometimes even the most perfect people, so to say, who we think wow, they have it all together. We all encounter, even if it's just obstacles or hardships, we all have things in life where it's not linear. It's certainly not linear. The path to success is not linear. The path to our career, relationships, there's bumps, there's trials and tribulations. And so I think if we sit down and effectively think how we go about that, then wisdom comes from that. Wisdom comes from hands-on experience and real life, experiences. It's a journey, it's a path. And again, it's not straightforward. So there's always something to learn. I say, I'm proud of myself for this. In tough times in life, I usually say I don't let things affect me for more than a day. Of course, I'm excluding a death or something big.
Right.
But the more minor things or even bigger things, I say, you know what, this is crappy in the moment, but you know what, if I can't really control it, if it's outside of my control, I feel my feelings, I get out what I need to get out. And the next day I'm like, all right, I'm back on track. Because that's another big thing, is if we start to let our feelings consume us too much, we can also get in trouble. So I'm not saying don't feel your feelings. Do feel what you need to feel, get it out of your system, vent, talk to a loved one, a family member, but don't let it control your reality in the next week or month, because that will also get you in trouble.
Exactly. Welcome, Z. Glad to have you with us. I saw your name pop up earlier, and I've got distracted by some great comments. So, welcome. Glad to have you as always. And okay, Patsy makes a comment, and I want to, as we're running out of time, I think this is a, a very important concept regards to gaining wisdom. Says we all have our moments here to experience and embrace changes on this planet. We are here only temporary. We will have to go home also. And what I want to cue in on her comment is that, and it relates to what you were just saying, uh, we've got to keep it in perspective. And I think that part of the perspective where many are missing, and that is the perspective of eternity. The fact that what we're walking right now physically on the earth is temporary, but it's not the end. It's a part of a much bigger perspective. And uh, if when we gain that perspective, it affects our thinking. Do you think that your generation thinks about eternity and the much, much bigger perspective?
I would say no, sadly, if I'm going to be completely honest. I even know some individuals who do believe there's a God. They believe
Mhm.
the Bible is real in a certain context, but no, they don't think about many things long term, I would say. Going back to that instant gratification, it's the
Mhm.
microwave effect. It's like, I can have anything right now with the snap of a finger. But the missing link is when it comes to job satisfaction, your career, and your relationships. Those are things that take time to cultivate. Those are things you cannot just have reaching out. And so those are huge things in life. And that's why we need to learn to get comfortable with delayed gratification. And that kind of
Mhm.
coincides with heaven. It's like we don't know as Christians when God is going to come back. And I hope people who are Christians are scared of that. Like that's a pretty dang scary thing, but it's a good kind of scary to know that we don't know when that's going to happen. And so I want to do everything in my power as a Christian to spread the gospel, to plant those seeds, because I don't want, that was a big awakening moment for me too, is I don't want God to come back and be like, yo, like, why haven't you been talking about the gospel? And so that was a moment for me where I'm like, okay, like I gotta get in the gears here a little bit more. And so that was another pretty cool thing. But yeah, I mean, I wish more and more people would start thinking about eternity and what it takes to get there. And I guess
Mhm.
those sacrifices that must be made in order to get there. But I believe they are healthy and beneficial sacrifices.
Mhm. Welcome, Wendy. Welcome, Celeste. Glad to have you with us. Appreciate you being here. And, you know, one of the things, and we've talked about this on the podcast previously, is that the pandemic that we've all gone through, and won't get into the relative accuracy or any of that in regards to it, but one of the things culturally that it forced us as a culture in a big way was uh, to face our own mortality
Mhm.
and to begin to face the question is this physical life all there is? And I think a lot of people, as a result of this being in their face, were frightened
Yeah.
because they didn't know what to do with it. And the solution for many were to turn to the government and depend on the government to take care of us. And I don't think that's a wise move. So, final thought: how do we help, in a loving way, encourage all generations to think in terms of eternity?
Yeah, I think the bigger thing here is respect, respecting one another, respect. We all have a different way of going about work, a way of going about religion, relationships, everything. But if we can just learn to accept our differences and come together,
Mm.
not forcing anything down anyone's throat, I think that's the best we can possibly do. Because again, we can only be loving to one another and show through certain facts what is real, what isn't real. But in terms of eternity, it's just, yeah, loving one another, respecting
Mm,
one another, and showing that we care about each other. And that's the only reason why we're bringing it up. It's not to show I'm right, you're wrong, here's why. It's because I want the best for you. And
mm,
obviously, I believe this is the one truth, and I want you to go to heaven with me.
mm. Yeah, motivation makes a big difference in intent. Well, we're up against the clock. And so I have to ask, would you consider coming back on the podcast?
Yeah. And I'd love to do another, like, question-based podcast too. I'm an open book. I love answering questions. I love being challenged and hearing different viewpoints. I genuinely do. So I'm all about that. And
Okay.
when it comes to my faith, I will always make time for these things as well.
Well, we will talk and see what your schedule allows, and definitely bring you back, because you have, and this I love, is generated a lot of comments and feedback. Because at the end of the day, seeking wisdom is not about me giving
Yeah.
out wisdom. It's not about that. It's about us together seeking wisdom as to use a biblical term, as a body,
Yes.
to grow. And so we'll get that scheduled later and figure it out and go from there. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
Brielle, thank you so much for
For
taking your time, and thank you for bringing a lot of your friends along. It's so good to have them on, and this has been a great time. And I have to tell you, as someone of an older generation, it gives me hope for the future of the generations, because uh, gaining wisdom is such a key for all of us. That's why in scriptures it says better than gold, better than silver, better than gems, better than anything, and should be valued in that way. And it's good to see that you have found that priority and that you're sharing it with others. And so that's exciting. Any final thoughts before we close out?
Yeah, I mean, I would just say some words of encouragement. Everybody's on their own path at the end of the day. We're all trying our best. We're all trying to figure things out and just handle life as it comes our way. So don't be too hard on yourself. Give yourself grace and know that making mistakes is inevitable sometimes. It's part of life, but don't beat yourself up over it.
Very well put. So again, thank you. We'll be back next Monday for Wisdom Seeker Live podcast, and hope to seek and gain wisdom together. Again, thank you, Brielle. How can people get a hold of you best if they want to reach out?
Yeah, so I would say LinkedIn, Brielle Wohlenhaus. That's my best way. Send me a DM, connect with me. I'm always active on there. So that's the best way.
Very good. I encourage anyone, if you're not connected with Brielle, do that quick, because I have a feeling before long she'll be at the limit, connection limit on LinkedIn, and then you can only follow. So take care, everyone. God bless. Look forward to seeing you next week on Wisdom Seeker Live podcast. Take care. Bye.